invite Mr. Andrew Cameron Bailey to the hot seat. And his story...
I will accept the invitation, thank you so much.
I'm glad you do. I'm glad you did. With a story named A Brief History of Time. A brief history of time.
And as we only have 15 minutes, it's going to have to be brief. Because we've got 14.5 billion years, I think, and counting.
Let's see if we can summarize it.
All right, hello, Sunrise Ranch, hello, friends. Boyd, please don't touch that. If that's okay, yeah, it'll be good. And because we're recording, I'm going to be looking into the camera, so forgive me, I'll acknowledge everybody, but the most important person here has 3 legs, the tripod. Okay, yeah, here we are. So what I'd like to do, I'm an actor, so plays go in 3 phases. There's the situation, there's the challenges the hero faces, and there's the resolution. So I'm going to try to break this into 3 5-minute segments, each of which somehow tells both my own story and our story, the story of humanity, the story of existence on planet Earth. Challenging? Sure, love challenges. Okay, here we go. Where should we begin? Let's begin at the beginning. What is the beginning? I think most of us would say the Big Bang. Well, I have some news about the Big Bang. It wasn't a bang, you couldn't hear a thing. Sound travels through air and atmosphere. There was no air, there was no atmosphere, there was no sound. Interesting, huh? What it was, as Dr. Jude Currivan says, a big breath. It was an exhalation through the black hole, through the black hole at the beginning of time. Think about that. So we breathe on a certain cycle, on a certain rhythm, at a certain scale. We inhale and we exhale. So does the universe, or the multiverse. We're part of a great big exhalation where the implicate order is spread out into infinity, and at some point the universe is going to reverse that, and it's going to inhale, at which point it'll all be sucked back through that black hole and end up wherever it came from, and I cannot remember the other side. I'm sorry, I'd love to. Okay, so that's where it begins. So time is this thing that we perceive as the past, the present, and the future. So that's the breakdown for this presentation, as in the 3 acts. The first one's the past, second one's the present, third one's the future, and I will diverge radically from that structure if you don't mind. So, I'd like to start with me, might as well. I think you know I'm a Brit. I was born in Coventry, England in 1943. It was the most destroyed city in England during World War II. It was a pile of rubble, and after it was all over and about 20,000 of our neighbors had been killed, my dad looked around and said, you know what, I think we need to go somewhere else. And he had partly grown up in New Zealand, so he figured he was going to get on a ship and go find a spot on the planet where it was beautiful and safe and sunny, perhaps. You know, in England it's not necessarily that. And that's what he did. He got on a ship, he went to New Zealand, where he'd spent his years from age 11 to 17, I believe. And on the way home, the ship stopped in Cape Town, South Africa. And he looked ashore and he saw that beautiful Table Mountain. And some of you may have been there, and many of the EDL folks live there right now. And he got off the ship, and instead of getting back on, he gave the purser, or whoever he was, a letter to my mum. And back in England, Dad had been gone about 6 months, the letter to Mum says, pack it up, get on the next ship to Cape Town, South Africa. My poor mum. with a crazy little 3-year-old named Andrew, who was apparently an absolute, what was the word, Connie, she used for me? A little devil. I was a little devil, all right. And I had a little brother who was like 8 months old, Doug. Yeah. And so that's what she did. And got on a ship, moved to Africa, and had the extraordinary privilege of growing up in South Africa, which is one of the most beautiful, physically beautiful, environmentally amazing countries on the planet. The wildlife, I know you know about the wildlife. There's nowhere on the planet remotely like it. And I got there before it's not as good as it was. When I got there, it was amazing. So I was in the midst of all these monkeys, in the midst of all these Zulus, and I find myself in a boys' high school. In those days we had segregated schools, so it was the girls' school and the boys' school. And the educational standards were Oxford and Cambridge level. So once you matriculated, it was called, from high school, you were ready for Oxford, you were ready for Cambridge, you were ready for Stanford or Princeton or wherever you were headed. And I was in the science channel. At age 12, they literally divided you up and said, you're going to go this path, you're going to go that path. There are about 5 different paths. Some people end up in commerce, and some people ended up in architectural drawing, and in my case, ended up in science. And in that science class, here's the miracle of me as a 14-year-old. I was a skinny little wretch, and I'd been very asthmatic as a kid. And one of my new buddies, some of the kids in that class, I'd known since the age of 4 or 5, because we'd gone through all the other levels together in these, junior, primary, whatever they're all called, different from here. And one of my classmates was a guy named Barry Oliver Higgs. He was 14. He was a genius. He'd been writing adult poetry since the age of 8. He was a mathematical genius. He was a literary genius. I'm not kidding. He was literally the first genius I'd ever met in my life. And so he turned out to be an extraordinary influence on my life. Now, he went on, I'll just mention his story because it's fantastic. My best friend as a 14-year-old and all the way through high school to 16 and 17, Barry was probably South Africa's first beatnik. He never, ever washed his hair. So it looked a lot like a rat's nest. He intentionally damaged his school uniform. We used to wear these, it was called a basher, you know what a boater, a circular straw flat hat like that. And you cut off the top of the razor blade and you cut it down, so it was really minimal. And his pants were ragged, and you had to have, the bottoms of your pants had to be a certain size or you were in trouble, right? And skinny pants were a sign of that you were some kind of rebel. So his pants were really skinny. And on and on and on. And his jacket was moth-eaten and hilarious. His academic approach was the things he was interested in, he got 100% or more, because you could score higher in math, for example. The things he was not interested in, he flunked them completely. Kind of an interesting guy. Here's what he did one day, and I don't remember, he was 14, 15 years old. He comes into school with a book he's found. And that book was a book of Zen Buddhism. Zen. So from that moment on, there was a little group of us, maybe 5 of us. Connie met one of them, Peter Schutz, who had come in from Austria and joined our class. And we tried to figure out what it meant to become enlightened. We tried to figure out what on earth Zen Buddhism meant. What did you do as a Buddhist, and especially a Zen Buddhist? And then, so we struggled with that. We were trying to do yoga, which meant sitting in the full lotus, and impossible tasks like that. And about a year later, he brings another book, and it's Jack Kerouac, On the Road. And then, of course, Jack and Neil, what's his name? Jack Kerouac and Neil, thanks, darling. And Neil Cassidy God, the second book is called The Dharma Bums. I had no idea what Dharma meant, but we devoured these books and modeled our lives after these crazy American beatniks. And that's how I got to be sitting in front of you today, because that influence continues to this day. Okay, so that got me started. So that's my beginning, shall we say, on the spiritual path. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what I was looking for. Made it through high school, did all of those things. Really superb high school. The heartbreak of my life was the last day of high school because it was over. And this beautiful community of brothers I had, we dissipated. Wow. We're still in touch, though. Those who are still alive, we're still in touch. So here we are. Come 1967, 68, I read an article in Life magazine about something called cosmic consciousness. And this was a term apparently that came out of Canada. And then there'd been a song on the radio, I don't know if you've ever heard it, something about California girls, by this band called the Beach Boys. You probably heard of them. And so I thought, California girls, that sounds attractive. And I was reading everything that was coming out of Northern California, and it seemed to have something to do with cosmic consciousness. So Jerry, I did not do LSD with Timothy Leary. But I did do LSD with Timothy Leary's kids. They became good friends of mine because I sailed across the Atlantic Ocean, found myself in Santa Cruz, California, which turned out to be the heart of the beast. It's where everybody moved to. When Ram Dass came back from India, where did he come to? He came to my house in Santa Cruz. I moved out, he moved in, I moved up to a place up in the mountains. And so I knew Ram Dass. And my spiritual teacher, the first formal initiation I ever had into a yoga practice was Ralph Metzner. So there you have the three Harvard professors, Timothy Leary, Ralph Metzner, and Richard Alpert, who became Ram Dass. So that was the kind of thing that was going on in Santa Cruz, right? And this was 1970. What an extraordinary place to land, and what an extraordinary time to land there. I'm so grateful for that this Thanksgiving. Whew, and I'm just going to skip the rest, and it's a long story, and some of it's written, and you're welcome to track it down. A book was just published where I got to write the first chapter of the book, and Connie shot the cover, and I put all of that together.
And the name of the book? The
name of the book is actually Hip Santa Cruz, Volume 7, and I've contributed to that through photography and so on. You all know I'm a photographer, so I'm probably being a little incoherent and rambling here, but I think
you're actually doing great.
Yeah. So
if you can just wrap it up in a way that it speaks into like a story that that has like a beginning to end. Like for example, you mentioned some of these amazing people that have changed the world in so many ways. So maybe you can speak into how you were changed by being in that scene. I think that's something that everybody would be interested in hearing.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to tell you not about LSD. I'm going to tell you about methylene-deoxyamphetamine. Do you know what that is? MDA, the love drug? And that is what Ralph Metzner, very serious German scientist, was trying to find a substance that would permanently transform the human consciousness into an open-hearted, evolutionarily advanced person, okay? So I got to do that with him, but his initiation to me was actually nothing to do with drugs. It was into Agni Yoga, an ancient Hindu practice, which was an extraordinary thing that I've used all these years since 1970. But one night, with about a dozen people, I was taken on a journey, and it really did change my life. We went on this guided shamanic thing under the influence of MDA, which is completely extraordinary. It's not a psychedelic. It just opens the heart and gives you like infinite energy, and you're just here now. It's remarkable. Careful who you do it with, because you'll probably end up marrying. Is that?
Is that where you met Connie?
No, but Connie and I were having a hard time in our relationship once, and a friend of mine was going to Burning Man, and I said, if you can find some MDA at Burning Man, please bring it back. We could use it. And Connie and I did a very healing experience together about 10 years ago. Anyway, we're going to wrap this up. I'm going to mention Barbara Marks Hubbard, who all of you know, and all of you are aware who lived here. And when Connie and I got here, Katie, it was exactly February of 2017, which is when you got here. So bless you for that. And Katie was put sort of in charge of us to make sure that we were comfortable, had everything we need. You had that beautiful role, and you were like our counselor. Thank you. It was beautiful. So we get back to America after a month-long sojourn in Mexico at this extraordinary conference down there. We come here, and on our very first day, we didn't know what we were going to do when we got back. And there was an email from David Carshare, your room is ready, come for lunch. Like, wow, we didn't, we'd spoken about it months before, and that's what had been out of touch. We got here, after lunch we were taken over to the accommodations, and there was an entire group of people sitting there with our friend Barbara Marks Hubbard, who we'd known for years before. And this group the conference was called Emerging Technology. And it was a get-together of an extraordinary gathering of brilliant young people. And we thought we'd missed the conferences. It was all of January. They stayed, and they didn't leave for maybe another 6 weeks, some of them. So we totally bonded with these people. Our first month or two here was completely, totally extraordinary. And then, as Connie said, from that moment on, it's been such a blessing to be here. It's been beautiful to do all of the projects and assignments we've done. The first thing we did as our big assignment was called The Wisdom of the Elders. And there are many people in this room who we filmed their stories. It was really, really beautiful.
Wow, we need to publish that, and we need to have a link to that at
That
some
would be
point.
good, yeah.
That would be amazing.
Mm-hmm. This has been incredible. At the moment, Connie and I are transitioning into A8, so you know where we're going to be living as of Sunday. A8, we were in there before, we love it. And this next 3 months, a beloved brother, showed up and paid our rent and our food for 3 months. So we're still here, we're not leaving, we're just changing mode. And we're going to be working on it there. We've got a beautiful film that we're working on. I've got a new book I'm working on, which is a continuation, if you will, of Barbara's work. It's called Homo Sapiens, Conscious Evolution in Action. So that's all drafted. And so we've got a lot we're building and developing, and we love you guys, and it's such a delight to be here. So thank you.
Wow, thank you so much.